What were your first thoughts when arriving at your new school?
I was nervous. I'd been bullied before and I assumed that this time would be no different.
How did you feel when you thought you'd blown things with Johnny? Did you think he'd ever end up being your best friend and you'd be through so much together?
I was so worried when I'd blown things with him. All I wanted was a best friend, someone I could rely on, and I assumed that it wouldn't be with him and I'd have to find someone else.
How did you feel when Cara blackmailed you? You wanted to protect Amber.
Of course I wanted to protect Amber. She meant everything to me as I had no one else. There was no way I was going to obey Cara. I had to keep Amber's secret hidden. I was scared, but I wasn't going to betray my beloved sister.
Why did you decide that Lilliana was untrustworthy when she turned up at your house? Why didn't you believe your sister?
I was stupid and naive back then. I just assumed she would be a great person being in my family and everything, but obviously Yvonne certainly proved that just because someone's in your family doesn't mean they're a nice or pleasant person. I should have believed Amber, and I really don't know why I didn't.
How did you feel when you realised that Lilliana wasn't the person you thought she was?
I felt betrayed, but I also felt like a complete idiot. I don't know why I ever trusted her.
How did you feel when Rose was treating you horribly?
I used to love my mum, until she started acting stranger towards me. I just wanted the woman she used to be back. I didn't like the new her.
What were your first thoughts upon your first ever meeting with your aunt, Yvonne?
I was frightened. I'd heard stories of her, and I knew what she could be like.
When you first set eyes on Lilliana, what were your thoughts?
She was annoying and crazy, or at least that's what I thought. At first I thought she was playing with me, like she wanted something from me, but I was so wrong about that.
At first, Freddie bullied you. How did this make you feel, and did you ever think he'd become your best friend?
I was sick of being bullied. I just thought he was just like those kids that used to bully me, but wasn't as forceful as them. I didn't think who his sister talked to was actually any of his business, but after hearing what he said about Lilliana, that he couldn't lose her just like he lost his dad, I genuinely understood. Because we'd both lost our dads that day, and I knew exactly how he was feeling, because I felt the same for Amber. And no, I didn't think we'd ever become friends, but I'm so glad we did. He wasn't really a bully, he was just scared and protective.
When Yvonne first kidnapped you, what was going through your brain?
I was freaked out. I couldn't tell what she'd do, whether she'd kill me or not.
How did you feel when Lilliana finally told you the truth about Nate, and that Yvonne was Nate's murderer?
Shocked. I was shocked at first, but when I really thought about it, it didn't surprise me that Yvonne would commit such an act. I felt so bad for Lilliana and Freddie though, because it almost felt as if it was my fault since Nate was protecting me and Ted just got in the way.
Were you feeling guilty after you and Lilliana fought? Were you worried about her?
Well, I had no idea what would happen next, but I immediately regretted the words that came out of my mouth, and as soon as she got snatched by Yvonne, I knew I'd messed it up. I was so worried for her.
How did you feel when you saw Lilliana being pushed off the top of the bridge?
I was screaming internally. I literally just told Lilliana I hope that Yvonne teaches her a lesson, and now I was watching her fall from a 50-foot railway bridge. I felt overcome with treacherous guilt.
Were you anxious when you first went to see Freddie after Lilliana's accident? Looking back now, are you glad that you did actually go and see Freddie?
I was very anxious. I wouldn't have gone if Johnny hadn't pressurised me into it. I thought he'd yell at us, and at first he did, but all he needed was someone to talk to, someone to let in, and I suppose that was us. And I'm sure now he's very glad he didn't slam the door in our face, and that Johnny did put his foot in front of the door. I'm certainly very glad. He's been through a lot and he deserves friends, which he didn't even have then. I couldn't imagine where he'd be now if he hadn't met me.
How did you feel when Cara's niceness turned out to be an act? How upset were you after she said what she did about Lilliana?
Obviously, I knew how Cara could be, so I was extremely panicked. I knew what she was capable of, and I was horrified after what she said about Lilliana.
How did you feel after Amber ran away?
Upset. I begged her not to go, but of course I had no idea she was only doing it because she loved me.
How angry were you after finding out that Freddie was hiding something he wouldn't tell you about?
I was angry, but I knew Freddie, and I knew that he never did something without a reason, and I kept stressing to Johnny that I wasn't going to push him to breaking point like I did Lilliana. I wasn't going to let anything happen to another best friend of mine.
What were your first impressions of Freddie's new friend, Eve?
I thought she was a snob and hadn't changed from when she was younger. I kept questioning Freddie's decisions, although it's not like Freddie warmed to the random new girl either, but was forced to talk to her because of Cara's blackmail. And when I heard of Eve's bullying, I really wanted Freddie to stay away from her, but obviously they were meant to be together, even if Freddie didn't realise it.
How did you feel when Rose told you the truth about Yvonne and she'd made it up with you?
I mean, I was happy she felt awful, but I was still a little wary around her. I knew it was a little risky trusting her, but we could work through this, and well, now I'm so glad we did make up.
How did you feel when Freddie ran away and eventually Cara told you he was dead and you instantly panicked? How were you feeling at this point?
I was worried that he'd run away. I kept thinking I messed up and pushed him away and would never see him again. I regretted ever speaking to Eve about him because he got angry that we'd spoken behind his back, and because at that point in time he hated Eve. I thought I'd never be able to make it up with him, and well, when Cara said that, I was immediately thinking, no, no, no. And then Johnny told me that Cara's known for her lying, so I started to relax a bit. Still freaked out, but there was a sliver of hope he was still alive.
How freaked out were you when you found out Freddie's secret when he eventually told you?
Shocked and scared. He'd known about Amber this entire time, but he'd only been trying to protect our family because he knew if I told someone then I'd probably get hurt. Or him, or Eve. I didn't want him to get hurt, and I was so scared for him. I wasn't angry at all. I understood, and so many people told him not to tell the truth, but I'm glad that he did tell me the truth, and at least no one did die, except Cara, of course.
How did you feel when you knew about the fire that Freddie and Eve were trapped in?
I knew how dangerous fire could be, like when my mum's car was on fire, and I was so scared for Freddie and Eve. I thought I'd never see my best friend again, and I couldn't bear that. I remember how scared he was on Wednesday after Eve had been kidnapped, but he was still there. He just knew he couldn't escape whatever Cara was planning. He sounded so panicked when he came to my house on Thursday morning.
How did you feel when you saw Cara's dead body?
I already knew the real reason why he attempted to murder her a couple of weeks before and ended up in prison. I was really angry then, since I just assumed he wanted revenge, and that was no reason to end up in a prison cell for life, away from all his friends and family. I knew he'd probably go for again, but he went to talk to me first. Sabrina had told him about Freddie already, so he knew, and he was angry. And then that's when he told me the real reason. He was trying to protect Freddie and me from Cara so she wouldn't hurt us, and I choked up. So when he actually killed Cara when Freddie was still in a coma, I knew it was loyalty, and I felt almost pleased because he did it out of loyalty for me and Freddie, and that Freddie wouldn't be taunted by Cara again. I knew when I told Freddie he'd be happy. I also knew Johnny said a few things to Cara whilst he was killing her, like how Freddie would live and she wouldn't, and I hate to say that. This all made me happy, but yeah. But I was also scared for Johnny because he was on the run from police and I knew how that could go.
How did you feel whilst Freddie was in hospital?
Worried, anxious. I saw the condition he was in and I was scared his life would never be the same again. Due to the severity of his injuries, I knew he'd need a lot of care, something that Amy couldn't give him, which meant I had to act fast before he got discharged.
How happy did you feel when Rose actually offered Freddie a home?
Delighted and, well, shocked. Like, really? My mum actually offered him a home? I was so excited to break the news to Freddie when he woke up because I knew he'd be astounded.
How scared were you when you knew Yvonne was planning something against you and Freddie after Johnny had killed Cara?
Scared. I mean, I didn't care for myself so much, but I didn't want Freddie to get hurt. He'd been through enough hell already, and Johnny didn't deserve any of this for killing the girl who almost burned my best friend alive.
How did you feel having your freedom restricted?
I was angry. I just wanted to live my life and be able to meet up with friends. I hated being trapped inside. I just wanted to live a normal life.
How paranoid were you when you realised both Johnny and Freddie had been kidnapped, and how did it make you feel when Livy tried to help you?
That certainly wasn't how I was expecting it to go. I didn't expect Freddie to go after Johnny. That wasn't the plan. But Yvonne didn't care how it happened as long as she had all three of us. I was scared for myself and them. I didn't want Livy to help as I didn't want her to be caught up in all this. If only I'd known that even her friends were planning to collect me and then find them with me. I wish they'd have explained that.
What did you feel like when you realised Johnny wasn't running with you?
I felt wrapped with guilt. I just left my best friend in Yvonne's building without realising it. I couldn't leave him here. I had to go back.
What were you thinking when you managed to push Freddie out of the way, hence saving him from being trapped with you?
I knew I had to act. If all three of us got hurt, then we might never make it out alive because I knew someone had to get help. And Freddie was closest to the door. I had to make that quick split-second decision, and it had to be him. He was the only one of us that could have been saved.
How did it feel when you were informed of Yvonne's death and that Freddie had killed her?
I felt a wave of relief. She literally shot Freddie twice, as well as Eve once, and now she was dead. Wouldn't you be pleased? I knew she couldn't hurt Freddie anymore, but I secretly knew it wouldn't end there.
What were your first impressions of Delaney when she arrived at your house?
She certainly seemed genuine, and she was open to talking about herself. I knew Eve had done something to her, but I wasn't sure what.
How did you feel when Freddie brushed you off, refused your help, and didn't want to be friends anymore?
Betrayed, upset. I couldn't live without being his friend. We'd been through so much together. I knew he was doing it for a reason, but I wasn't letting him do it just to protect me, because I knew ending the friendship was hurting both me and him, and he was trying to hide how much it hurt. but it did.
What were you thinking when you knew Freddie was in danger? You knew he didn't want help, but you followed him anyway. Were you scared of the wolves?
I didn't care what he said, whether he hated me. I could live with him being angry for a temporary period of time, since I knew he'd never hate me forever. He couldn't. But I couldn't live with not being his friend, and it's a good job I did find him, because he was being chased by wolves, and then my mum and Delaney only came because I went out, so in theory I did save him. I was scared of the wolves, but I cared about him more.
How did you feel after Freddie wanted to hand himself into Callia? Did you want to stop him? Were you scared?
I panicked, but I couldn't stop him. He'd already gone, and I knew I had to do something. I was shocked when Delaney stepped forward willingly, and I knew she was stronger than me. I knew that for this time I had to sit back and let somebody else save Freddie. I couldn't always be his hero. I was scared for him, and when Delaney and Freddie showed up on our doorstep with Freddie covered in blood, I was so freaked out. But he'd survived before and he could survive again.
What were your first thoughts when arriving at your new school?
I felt like something was off. Not like my usual dislike for anything new, but it definitely felt off.
Why did you originally really dislike Ford?
I always thought Ford was evil. Now I see it's not him, but more his relatives.
Why were you always so rude to Lilliana? Why were you so protective?
She was the last part I had of an actual family. I didn't want to lose her.
How did you feel after the news was broken about Lilliana being pushed off the bridge? Were you angry? Were you scared? Were you upset?
I didn't know, okay? I still don't. I was scared, sure, but every emotion has cancelled out each other, and I felt nothing. I guess, well, I don't know what I feel. Scared? But to be honest, it felt so surreal. I'm so glad she was okay. I could have never forgave myself.
How did you originally feel when Ford turned up on your doorstep after Lilliana's accident, even though you two were sworn enemies?
I'm gonna be completely honest. I was absolutely scared out of my mind. I'm joking. I was just a bit confused though, and more or less panicked. Something had to be wrong, and I'm glad Ford told me.
Did you ever imagine that you and Ford would become extremely close friends?
Not in a million years, but I'm glad we did.
How did you feel when Cara blackmailed you?
Well, being blackmailed in the first place isn't great, but using Ford? That's absolutely disgusting.
What were your first impressions of Eve when you met her?
I didn't want to know her since she was best friends with Cara, and I mean was. But when I started talking to her, I couldn't stop. That was until I found out what she and Cara did to me.
Did you expect then you'd end up having a relationship with Eve?
Not at all. Not after I found out what she had done to me. But I'm glad we are. I don't know what would have happened if she wasn't there, protecting me every second that I was in danger.
When you found out about the part Eve had played in your past, how upset and angry were you?
I felt betrayed in some sort of sense. We weren't friends or anything, but it hurt to find out she was hiding that from me.
How much did it hurt having to keep the whole thing around Amber's disappearance a secret from Ford?
That hurt more than the whole Eve and Cara thing. Hiding something important from your own friend. That was messed up on my part, but I didn't have a choice.
You eventually did tell Ford the truth. How did this make you feel? Was it a relief?
I got a burden off my chest, I guess. It definitely felt good to tell Ford, but I was scared to frighten him, or even worse, Ford to not trust me anymore since I was hiding it.
When you realised that you loved Eve and you thought it was too late to tell her, how did you feel?
I wish I told her sooner. That's all I want to say.
When you and Eve were trapped together, how did you feel? Were you scared? What were you thinking when Cara unleashed her plans? Were you worried about Eve?
Being a victim of Cara is bad no matter who you're with, but I wish it just wasn't Eve.
How did you feel when you woke up in hospital? How did you feel when you saw that Ford was there?
Confused, I guess. I was glad that Ford was there, but I needed to know if Eve was alright. That's the only thing that's important.
How did you feel when you finally told Eve you loved her?
Relieved is an understatement, and I wanted to tell her so badly. That was the time to tell her.
When Ford told you the news that Cara was dead, how did you feel?
I didn't want to feel happy over someone dying, but it did make me a lot better.
How did you feel about Rose not letting you leave the house for your safety, since Ford was very annoyed about that?
Obviously I wanted to leave the house, but who would have known what happened if she let me? And well, Ford, I wish he could understand why I couldn't leave.
How did you feel when Ford pushed you out the way of the falling roof, meaning that he got hurt and you didn't?
It should have been me under that roof. I don't care if I get hurt. As long as people like Ford and Eve are okay, I'll be okay.
How did you feel when you saw Yvonne standing there with a gun?
I had nothing left to lose. If I died, then so be it. I'd rather die than live with the fact that I let others die instead.
What was going through your head and what were you thinking when Eve jumped in front of the gun and got shot instead of you?
I never felt so stressed in my life. I'll never understand why she did that either. She means too much to me. But the fact that she jumped in front of the bullet makes it seem like I mean a lot to her.
How did it feel to kill Yvonne? How were you feeling when she was confirmed to be dead?
Like Cara, I didn't want to be happy over her death, especially when I killed Yvonne. But it's hard to feel pity when life was just better. and it felt a whole lot better getting revenge for Eve.
How did you feel during that moment in the ambulance when you were having lots of flashbacks and nightmares before you fell unconscious? Were you scared?
It was like a really, really bad nightmare crossed with deja vu. That's what it felt like. I was more scared about falling unconscious and not waking up to see Eve.
What were you thinking when you first met Delaney?
I thought she's nice, but you can't take a first impression for granted. After all, and after my note from someone else's cousin, Ford, I can't be so sure about new people anymore.
How did you feel when you were almost forced to end your friendship with Ford to protect him?
I really didn't want to end my friendship with Ford, but what else could I do to save him?
How did you feel when you were being chased by wolves? Were you scared? What were you thinking when you saw Ford who'd come to find you? Were you angry he was trying to help you?
It felt like one of those nightmares I had in the ambulance. The fact that Ford was stupid enough to even be there is the most scary part. He could have been hurt or even killed.
How did you feel when Kalia planted dynamite in your car?
Okay, right. What on earth have I done to you to deserve that, Kalia? Okay, sure, I killed your aunt, but she tried to kill me, and Eve, and a load of my friends first, and surely you don't have that much of a bond with her, right? I can't even remember last time I spoke to my aunt. That might just be a Bishop family thing, though, of being terrible to speak to our own family members. Sorry, I'll stop ranting. Next question.
What made you decide to hand yourself into Kalia? Were you scared?
I refuse to let anyone else get hurt, and I still will. I don't care what happens to me, as long as everyone else is safe.
Were you shocked when Delaney wanted to help you against Kalia?
Well, I only met her not long ago, so yeah, fairly shocked. Nice to know someone despises Kalia as much as me, though.
What were your first thoughts when you met Ford after he joined your school?
He seemed really anxious and a bit lonely, but I could tell he cared. And he did, especially with Amber. Loyalty, I think, is one of the most important qualities of a friend.
How did you feel when Kara was trying to ruin everything and you wanted to stop her?
I'd never been happy with my sister's decisions, but she was my sister, so I tried to help here and there where I could, but she was going too far, and my new friendship with Ford continued that realization. I felt this burning itch to do something, but at the time, I was too scared.
How did you feel when Kara pushed Ford down the stairs and you felt guilty for not being able to defend him?
I've had many regrets in my life. This one is definitely up there. Ford is still trying to get me to let it go. I can't, not completely anyways. It marks the beginning of all the times I've failed Ford.
You wanted to avenge Ford by hurting Kara. How angry were you after what happened to Ford?
I still couldn't believe it happened. I knew Kara would follow through, she had in the past, but it still shocked and enraged me. I watched it happen in front of my eyes.
When you bumped into Sabrina for the first time, what were you thinking? Did you ever think she'd end up as your girlfriend?
At the time, I was a bit distracted to say the least. After everything with Kara, Ford, Kelly, Sabrina was my one ray of sunshine, and at the time I didn't really know how to take it. I wasn't really ready for it, and I certainly wasn't in the mindset to be looking for romantic interest, but her sunshine was contagious.
You did end up beating up Kara, and Ford was extremely angry. How did this make you feel?
I was so frustrated. I felt so good punching Kara, getting out all my anger, just for Ford to turn his back on me. Now I understand, though, why Ford didn't want any more violence back then.
How did you feel when Lilliana was blackmailing you? Were you scared?
Absolutely. My sister blackmailed me in the past over minor things. Siblings do that all the time, though. But this was nothing in comparison. Not to mention I was angry. I knew that girl was anything but good, and now I was reaping the consequences. And Ford, too.
How did you feel when you had to end your friendship with Ford and stop talking to him?
It was awful. The guilt and sadness I held was unbearable. But I had to, for both of us. Though I still regret it.
When you went to meet Ford on Sunday and then were forced to leave due to it being really late and Eliana needing to meet you, how did that make you feel?
I felt guilty. I needed more time with Ford, and he at least deserved that. And I slept in and took even that from Ford. But my own fear outweighed that guilt. Besides, I needed to secure Ford's safety. That was more important in the end.
How did you feel after your accident?
It really sucked. At first it really was a shock factor. There was no way I could have just been ran over. But I was. It happened to me. And that bothered me for a while. But all that time in the hospital was boring and awful. Everything hurt and I had nothing to do. And even after I was released, things still hurt for a very long time.
When you went to surprise Ford at the party, what emotions were you feeling?
A bit of pride, I will admit, for being able to recover enough to attend. It hurt a lot, but it was worth it to see Ford's face. I was just happy to be there and celebrate my friend, and start to make up for everything I did.
How did you feel when Sabrina, after a while of not talking, finally told you she loved you, and you've been close ever since?
I was so nervous during the conversation. I didn't want to overstep anything, but she told me she loved me back. The anxiety and stress I had been feeling vanished, and it was like I was floating, as free as a bird. It was one of the best feelings I had ever felt.
You hated Lilliana at first, told Ford not to trust her. Why was this? Why did you feel like this?
Paranoia, really. After Eliana, I was even more suspicious of anyone trying to get close to Ford, even though Ford insisted he'd be more careful.
In the end, after Lilliana's accident, you were the one who encouraged Ford to talk to Freddie. Why did you do this? And are you glad you did?
I'm absolutely glad I did. Ford and Freddie need each other, and I don't know how they could have gotten as far as they have without each other.
When Kara's niceness was revealed to be an act, how did that make you feel? And how did you feel when she provoked Ford, who ran out into the storm?
I was angry at myself for even considering she could possibly be nice. I hated that I even let her plan Ford's party at first. I'm supposed to be smarter than that.
How did you feel finding out Kara's former friend Eve turned up? Did you have a grudge against her?
Absolutely. Any friend of Kara's is an enemy of mine, and I remembered Eve. But I had to eventually accept that Eve had changed. She wasn't how I remembered. I guess I'm just really paranoid from everything that has happened.
For a while you were plotting to harm Kara and wouldn't talk about it to Ford. How did it feel keeping this a secret? How did the idea of hurting Kara feel to you?
I hated keeping a secret from Ford. So many times I considered telling him, for my conscience sake. But I held true, as much as I felt guilty for it. Hurting Kara admittedly made me a little sick, it would anyone. But the anger and need for justice I felt far outweighed it.
You were angry Ford made up with his mum. Why was this?
Ford's mum caused him more pain when he was already hurting, unapologetically blaming him for everything that had happened. I didn't trust her to not start doing that again, and Ford can be too nice for his own good.
How did you feel when Ford and you had a massive argument and didn't want to be friends anymore? You ended up rectifying it by protecting Ford from Kara in a cafe.
It hurt really bad. I'm glad I was able to repair things by protecting Ford.
Did you feel guilty when Ford found out what you were planning? Why did you still want to go ahead with it when he got angry at you?
Absolutely. I had been feeling guilty anyways, and then he found out, and it confirmed to me how bad it was, how hypocritical of me it was. But I knew it had to be done. I was in that deep already. I had to follow through.
How did you feel after your attempt to kill Kara failed?
Angry at myself. I knew it was over if I failed, and I did. I was scared for what was to come.
How did you feel when you were arrested? Were you scared?
Same as I said before, angry at myself, scared for my future. I couldn't stay in jail for who knew how long, especially with Ford and the others still in danger.
How did you feel after Freddie and Eve got injured in a fire? Did it make you more determined to hurt Kara after what she'd done?
I felt so much guilt. If I had just succeeded, it wouldn't have happened. But I was an idiot. I messed up. And Freddie and Eve had to deal with the consequences. Her actions also confirmed in my mind Kara had to be stopped more than ever. She had proved once again to only be getting more dangerous, and wouldn't be turning for the better. Ever.
How did it feel when you were killing Kara, and when you found out she was dead?
It really did feel good. Like a weight lifted off my shoulders. That was one more person we were all free from, including me. I was in Kara's shadow for way too long. When I got out of it, she wouldn't let me or my friends go. But I did also feel sick. I killed someone, my own sister, even if she was terrible. But no, I don't regret my actions, and never will.
How did it feel to be on the run from the police?
Being on the run sucked. Less than being in a jail cell, but it still sucked.
When you finally found out that Ford and Freddie managed to get you your freedom back, how did you feel?
Surprised, for one. The police actually made a reasonable decision, and in our favor. I could have thought it was a joke. But no, I still can't believe they pulled it off. I'm forever grateful.
How did you feel when you heard the news Sabrina got kidnapped?
Pure, unbridled rage. Maybe worse than I've ever felt. I saw more than read. Everyone I tried to protect just ended up getting hurt. But I couldn't let myself be hopeless, and I couldn't let myself be deterred by everyone's warnings. I needed to do everything I could to save Sabrina. I don't know what I'd do if something happened to her permanently.
When Ford and Freddie ran and unknowingly left you behind in the room, how did you feel?
I was terrified. I was hurting really badly, and I just couldn't keep up with them. I wanted them to escape, but I didn't want to be left behind. Maybe that was selfish of me.
How did you feel when Ford came back to get you?
I felt so much relief seeing him. An irrational part of me thought Ford would just purposefully leave me. Of course, that's not like him.
How did it feel when you heard the news that Freddie killed Yvonne?
I didn't know what to think. Relief at first, really. Yvonne, after everything she did, was gone. For good. First Kara, now Yvonne. Maybe we could return to a normal life. But then I felt the fear for him. I know what it's like to have to kill someone. I didn't want anyone else to ever have to experience the turmoil from it, no matter how justified it was.
How did you feel when Ford ran away and hadn't returned by midnight?
I was completely terrified. Really, at this point, being terrified is the new normal. Worst case scenarios were my first thoughts. It's not a good idea to jump to conclusions like that, but after everything we've gone through, those scenarios feel a lot more possible.
Everyone expects you to be the hero all the time. They expect so much after you kill Kara. This must be a lot of pressure. How does this make you feel?
I'm doing my best. But it's not enough. People still get hurt despite my best efforts. I just keep failing and failing. But I'm trying.
When you realised your former evil friend Kara was at your new school, what did you think? Did you try to avoid her at all costs?
Oh, I didn't move to a new school just to see that person again. Even though she and I used to bully Freddie together, I don't want to associate with her anymore. Of course, I tried to avoid her. Just look at what she did to me and Freddie. She almost burned us to death. She's truly insane.
How scared were you when Kara blackmailed you, especially since you'd wanted a fresh start?
I was terrified that my fresh start would crumble as soon as I saw Kara. The blackmail made it even worse, but I'm just relieved she's gone now.
Why were you originally so drawn to Freddie when you joined the school? Was it because of Kara's blackmail, or did you genuinely see something in him?
It wasn't because of Kara's blackmail. Even though the circumstances forced us to talk, the reason I wanted to talk to him wasn't because of Kara. It was because I genuinely felt something towards Freddie. I don't know how to describe it. Being around him just makes me feel happy.
Someone saw that you were talking to Kara and was worried about your influence on Freddie, especially when people were under the impression you had joined forces with Kara again. How did this make you feel when people thought so bad about you that they assumed you'd run back to your now nemesis, Kara?
Those rumors were absolutely wrong. I felt misunderstood. There's no way I'd ever go back and rejoin forces with Kara.
How did you feel when Freddie didn't even want to know you and wouldn't even look you in the eye?
I'm somewhat glad he didn't remember that I bullied him. But despite that, he still distanced himself from me. I thought I had a chance of being friends with him. But as soon as I realized that wasn't the case, I felt devastated.
How did you feel when your secret that you bullied Freddie alongside Kara when you were 10 got out and Freddie didn't even want to know you at all anymore?
I can't believe the secret got out. I didn't want Freddie to ever find out about that. It felt like I had lost everything. I'm really glad he gave me a second chance, despite knowing all that. But I need to make sure he never remembers that again.
How did you feel when Freddie betrayed you and told Ford about the blackmail, even though you begged him not to because you didn't want anything bad to happen?
As much as it hurts me, Freddie did have his reasons for telling Ford. I tried my best to stop him from spilling the news to Ford, but it didn't work in the end.
How did you feel when you realised how much you actually did love Freddie and assumed that he didn't feel the same way at all?
Even though I felt so happy to be around Freddie, It was hopeless that he would feel the same way. Freddie already found out that I bullied him a long time ago. There was no way he would love me back. It left me feeling empty. I was on the verge of giving up on life.
How did it feel when Kara kidnapped you and you realised you might never actually get to tell Freddie your true feelings?
Despite thinking that Freddie would never love me back, I still wanted to tell him about my true feelings. When Kara kidnapped me, I felt powerless. Apart from being worried that Freddie wouldn't love me back, I was terrified I couldn't even tell Freddie how I felt. The thought leaves me in utter despair.
How did you feel when Freddie also got kidnapped? You got angry at him for telling Ford the truth.
One part of me feels angry that his actions got him kidnapped. But another part of me is relieved that we could be together again. I'm happy that we managed to get out of that building together. But he really shouldn't have gotten himself into danger like that. I'm scared he'll get himself hurt.
How did you feel when Kara set fire to the building?
I already knew Kara was crazy. But I never knew she was that crazy. I was terrified that me and Freddie would die in that building. But at least we would be together in our last moments.
You were about to confess your feelings to Freddie and then he collapsed in your arms. How did you feel knowing he never heard what you said?
I felt broken. Freddie might have never found out about how I felt. And I would never know how he felt either. How could this happen to him?
How did you feel when Lena confirmed the fact that Freddie truly did love you because Lena had actually heard him say it?
I was doubtful at first because I truly believed there was no way he would actually love me. Despite that, deep down, I really wanted to believe that he loved me back. To be honest, I felt my heart skip a beat when Lena told me about that.
How did it feel to watch Johnny kill Kara, especially after how much damage she'd caused to your life?
It felt like a weight had finally been lifted off my shoulders. All the pain and torment is finally over. Goodbye, you insane person.
How did you feel when another person from your past showed up, Mitzi?
I suppose the end of Kara was too good of an ending. Turns out life just had to bring my past back again and rub it in my face. I wanted to forget everything from the past and start anew. So when Mitzi showed up, I felt like it was going to be like Kara all over again.
How did you feel when you learned that Freddie had been kidnapped after you tried to stop him from running but he still did?
I was so scared that he would be in danger again. Sometimes I really don't know if I can stop him from getting into these life-threatening situations. Again, he does have his reasons.
How did you feel when you were almost forced to ask Mitzi to drive you to save Freddie?
Well, if we weren't forced to ask Mitzi, I would have never turned to her for help. In the end, she did drive us to save Freddie, so I'm kind of glad she helped us. Well, who knows? Maybe Freddie wouldn't have survived if she didn't help us. I suppose she's not that bad of a person.
How did it feel when you jumped in between Yvonne and Freddie when she was pointing a gun at him?
I can't stand seeing Freddie get hurt again. I would rather take the bullet than risk Freddie losing his life.
How did it feel to actually properly kiss Freddie for the first time?
All I could think about was how his kiss felt. It felt like me and Freddie were closer than ever before. His soft lips made me lose track of my thoughts. I was in complete bliss for a few seconds. I want to go back and do that again.
How did you feel when you entered Ford's room and found your cousin Delaney there?
I felt betrayed and appalled. I came back from the hospital just to see Delaney flirting with Freddie in Ford's room. I couldn't believe my eyes. I almost sacrificed my life. And what do I get in return? Betrayal.
How did you feel when you thought Freddie had been flirting with Delaney, even though he hadn't?
I wanted to go back to the hospital and never return. Freddie betraying me is something that I've always been scared of. It makes sense that he would betray me, seeing how I once bullied him a long time ago. But it destroyed me from the inside out. I was doubtful when Freddie said he hadn't been flirting with Delaney. But I'm so glad he actually didn't. I need to cherish my precious Freddie while I still have him.
you first joined the school, what did you think? What was your first course of action?
Nervous, maybe. Anticipation? I don't really know, but I wanted to get a new start. One that didn't end up bad like my other school. I wanted to make friends. I wanted to meet new people and not end up as that one tomboyish girl who cycled. First thing I decided to do was to make a friend. I just so happened to bump into Johnny, and everything started from there.
How did it feel when Kuna kept telling you to keep away from Johnny?
Kuna always watched over me, and I'd follow her all the time. It kind of gets to a point where it becomes annoying. I was 12, and yet she was treating me like I was a helpless child. And I know I'm not. Johnny was fun to be around, and I've never really had that before. Even if I didn't love him romantically, he was still a friend.
How did you feel often being right in the middle of Johnny and Ford's ongoing feud? Did you really want to help Johnny?
I always wanted to help Johnny, of course. Johnny was oftentimes so affected, and I just wanted him to repair their relationship. I obviously didn't enjoy it. They'd ask me about each other, and I didn't particularly like it. And I wish that they'll somehow fix it. I know they'll always fix it. Somehow. Eventually.
How did you feel after Johnny's accident where he got hit by the car?
Painful. I really thought it was my fault, that I was the one who got him into it, that I shouldn't have thought about it.
How guilty were you feeling after his accident, even though it wasn't your fault?
But I did think it was my fault. I was pretty guilty, all right. I remember wondering if Johnny even loved me anymore for a while.
Why did you keep avoiding Johnny after his accident? Did you think you weren't good enough for him?
Just looking at him made me feel guilt. I don't know, maybe I thought that if Johnny didn't love me, it would make things easier. And of course, I'm not good enough for him. I caused him all of this. And I'm honestly surprised he was still okay with me after everything.
How did you feel when you finally announced to Johnny that you loved him?
I'm honestly surprised it didn't faint on the spot. It was so long since I had a real conversation with him, and I didn't know what he'd think.
From when you first met him, were you expecting Johnny to ever end up as your boyfriend?
Not really, no. You don't really expect you'll start dating someone you just met, right? But I did like him from the start, even if it's not a romantic interest. You know, I just wanted a friend for once.
How did you feel when you heard the news that Johnny had been arrested for attempted murder?
He did that to himself. Ford told him not to do anything with violence. I told him not to do that, too, and he still... So, I guess I was frustrated.
How did you feel when visiting Johnny in a prison cell?
Confused, I suppose. Angry. I don't understand why he'd do that. Everyone told him not to, and Johnny still did it?
How did it feel to break up with Johnny after he showed no remorse that he'd emotionally hurt Ford?
Why can't I just understand that tiny, nearly non-existent brain of his? I thought it was for the better. Ford was his friend, and he literally didn't apologize or explain why.
How did you feel when Johnny told you the real reason he tried to kill Kara? Not for revenge, but to actually protect Ford and Freddie.
Absolutely heartbroken. I realized the reason that Johnny did that was not because he was selfish like I thought. He was so selfless, actually, that he sacrificed their relationship just to protect Ford.
How did you feel when Johnny succeeded in killing Kara?
I was mostly worried about Johnny getting caught and going to jail. I was also worried that I couldn't really see him again. He was going to be on the run and hiding.
How upset were you that Johnny was on the run and you couldn't see him anymore and he would only talk to Ford?
Of course I was upset! Johnny is my boyfriend and he wouldn't see me anymore! I do understand, though. Ford means a lot to Johnny, and he probably trusts Ford the most.
How did it feel to get into cycling again and to make friends with Ford properly in the process?
I was mostly in between Ford and Johnny, but it was nice to relieve Ford of his stress a little bit and get to know him too. Ford is a nice person, and I know he's a good friend for Johnny.
How did you feel when you received a threatening note from Yvonne that put your life at risk, and Johnny's?
I knew that Johnny wouldn't get hurt from it, so it wasn't too much of a deal, but I was scared of Yvonne. Instead, I talked with Ford and Freddie about it. I didn't want to scare Johnny to feel like it was his fault or to get any more of a burden on him.
How did you feel when you heard what Yvonne was planning, to kidnap you just to lure Johnny in?
I had faith in my boyfriend that he wouldn't fall for it. I knew Johnny. He was smart, capable, and Yvonne was clearly underestimating him.
How did it feel when Yvonne was standing in front of you, about to kidnap you?
I was angry at her for everything. So, yeah, I guess a part of me was scared, but at the same time, strangely brave.
How did you feel when you saw that Yvonne was lying on the floor, dead?
I was more concerned for Freddie, Ford, and Johnny, but I was pretty relieved, you could guess. It's been, months of being hunted by this one psychopath, and it's finally over. Or at least, hopefully it's over. Hey, is it over? Answer me, you!
How did it feel going to visit Freddie the first time, especially after Lilliana had just had her accident?
It was definitely weird seeing him for the first time. I mean, it was different, but it felt good knowing that I had someone else out there that I didn't even know existed.
How did you feel when at first neither Freddie or Lilliana wanted to know?
It hurt me whenever neither of them wanted to know, because I came all that way, and I was really looking forward to meeting them, but oh well. It's in the past now.
How annoying is it when Tommy keeps on begging you to play games with him?
It's very annoying. I love him, but it gets annoying.
What did it feel like to snoop around in Freddie's bedroom?
It felt really good to sneak around Freddie's bedroom. I mean, there's a few things that I found that I'd rather not go into detail on, but other than that, it was pretty nice. I left his room really messy after it got done. I loved it.
How did it make you feel when you saw how horribly Amy treated Freddie?
I felt really bad after I found out how horrible she treated Freddie. It really, really hurt me, because Freddie's so close to me, and it made me mad knowing someone was hurting him whenever he doesn't even deserve it. So, I hope she gets what's coming to her.
When Freddie finally accepted your help in his impossible situation, how pleased were you to be able to help him?
I was so happy to be able to help him. I was finally getting him out and helping him getting what he deserved, freedom. Even if it took a little push. It's worth it. I'm glad he's out of there, and I'm glad he's happy.
You managed to convince Freddie that Eve loved him, which she does. Were you glad you did?
I was glad that I was able to convince Freddie that Eve loved him. He deserved to know, and she did, and he loved her, and they just seemed made for each other, you know? It made me feel happy, knowing that they get to be together.
How did you feel when you heard about the fact that Freddie and Eve were in a fire?
I was mad. I was scared, but I was more angry than anything that somebody would put Freddie and Eve in a fire. I have never wanted to hurt someone near as bad as I did Yvonne in that moment.
When going to help Ford, Freddie and Johnny after hearing of Yvonne's antics, how did you feel? Were you scared or were you hopeful?
I was scared whenever I heard what Yvonne had done to Ford, Freddie and Johnny. But I had to remain the calm one, because Eve was not. And I knew if I wasn't calm, then nothing was going to go right, and somebody would end up hurt or worse. I mean, they did, but at least they're alive.
How did you feel now that you're practically best friends with Lilliana? Did you ever expect she'd become your best friend?
I feel really good that I'm friends with Lilliana. I never thought it would happen. It's funny how that worked, because we never got along, but we just... I don't know, it just kind of happened. It's really good, though. Lilliana's one of the best friends that I have. It's amazing. And I'm glad.
How did you originally become so sadistic?
Oh, you silly little creature. How did the first roses become pink? How did the sea become blue? Some things just are.
How did you feel upon first meeting Ford? Did you think that in the future you would really want to inflict pain on him?
I thought he was an annoying little worm, and I've yet to be proven wrong.
How did it feel to slam into Johnny with your car? Did it feel good?
Oh, no. It was actually awful. My seatbelt caught when I hit him, and it gave me the absolute worst shoulder pains. Oh, wait, you mean like morally? Yeah, it felt amazing.
How does it feel when you're in prison after the hit and run involving Johnny?
Well, the food was terrible, and my bunkmate snored worse than a rhino with sleep apnea. How do you think? It was prison.
How did you feel after Rayalynn betrayed you and went to Ford for help?
That foolish girl didn't know what she was tangling with. Ugh, children.
How did you feel when you managed to escape prison? Are you glad you can now torment Ford and his friends again?
Of course I am. I felt like an NFL player finally cleared to rejoin the team after an injury. Just a minor setback that made me return better than ever.
How did it feel when you bundled Ford into your car and kidnapped him? Did it make you feel pleasure?
It was very exciting at the time. I thought I finally had the upper hand against their little band of misfits. That was before Lilliana came along and ruined everything.
How angry were you when Lilliana came and succeeded to rescue Ford?
Furious! To be betrayed is one thing, but by my own daughter. Ugh, You feed them and clothe them and change their filthy diapers, and this is the repayment you get.
Soon the truth came out that Nate and Ted were murdered by you. Firstly, how did you feel having been the person who murdered Ford and Freddie's dads? Secondly, how angry are you that everyone knows the truth, or are you almost glad in a way?
Angry? Please. I wear that like a badge of honor. That selfish brother-in-law of mine had it coming for the way he treated me like some kind of monster. Guess I showed him the monster in the end.
How did it feel to shove Lilliana off the bridge with Ford watching?
It felt incredible. That little girl was a thorn in my side for far too long. Taking care of the problem was like squashing a particularly annoying fly.
How did it feel to be in prison again after what you did?
I felt like a caged beast. Do you know how annoying it is to be stuck inside a filthy barred box while the world continues to turn without you? Plus, the food was no better the second time around.
After you escape from prison, you take a step back and let Kara do most of the dirty work. Why is this? Are you proud of Kara for what she did to Freddie and Eve in the fire?
Sometimes it's best to do your dirty work from the shadows. Kara already had a history with these fools, and she wanted to take the lead. So why not?
After you heard of Kara's death and she'd been murdered by Johnny, how did you feel, especially since your little star had just been killed?
I think the proper term is pure, unbridled rage. My little star was taken away from me by someone who isn't worth the gum on the bottom of my shoe. She was like the daughter I never had. Especially considering how awful the ones I did have turned out to be.
How good did it feel when you succeeded on trapping Ford, Freddie and Johnny?
It was a rush like nothing else. I felt like a lioness who had finally captured the antelope she'd been hunting for ages. Powerful, confident, and incredibly ready for blood.
How did you feel after you shot Freddie's girlfriend, Eve?
I felt the sweet revenge for taking away my Kara.
How did you feel after you'd managed to shoot Freddie? Did you expect him to be able to fight you back and get the gun off you?
Had I expected it, I would have taken a different approach. Little twerp caught me off guard, I'll give him that. But he isn't in the clear. Not yet. Not when there are others willing to finish my work for me.
You tried to keep Ford away from Lilliana to protect him. How angry were you when he ignored your wishes?
Upset, but I honestly believed Lilliana had changed, and I was happy she was helping Ford. I was torn.
Why did you end up having a relationship with Nico? Was it to do with how much you were hurting after Nate's death?
Well, it went something like this. When I wouldn't tell Ford about his dad and he wanted to find out, I was considering telling him. Then I remembered my reaction to Nate's death. How I felt when she wanted to take someone away from me again, and Nico was there. He distracted me from Ford's problems. It was a horrible thing to do. I know.
In the end, you turned on Ford, often getting angry at him. Why did you take everything out on him? Was there a deeper meaning to this, like how much you miss Nate?
I was mostly upset at him for not listening to me, and I guess I was a little possessive because,
Speaking of Nate, how much do you still miss him? How did you feel after your own sister murdered him?
It feels like a hole that I'll never be able to fill. Not with Nico, not with revenge, not with anything. I hate my sister, and I'm glad she's dead.
How did you feel when Amber, your own daughter, ran away without a word?
Worried for her, me, and Ford. Having Amber gone freaked me out. I knew it had to do with Kara, which couldn't be good. If something happened to Amber, what would happen to me? With only Ford, I might take my anger out on him again. And with no sister or dad and a mother who hated you, that would be awful for both of us.
Eventually, you and Ford made up after you told him of Yvonne's threats, and you ended up hugging him. Did this make you feel better? Were you glad?
Of course. I was glad he forgave me for all my mistakes, and I would have another chance to make it up to him.
How did you feel when Ford started having doubts about trusting you again?
Like I was back to square one.
When you drove Ford and ended up seeing Kara's dead body, how did you feel? How did you feel now that the girl who had been tormenting your son and his best friend was dead?
Horrified, but I was more worried about Yvonne than glad Kara was dead. And freaked out over the body, of course.
How did you feel knowing Johnny killed Kara?
I still can't believe my son is friends with murderers. Justified, but murder is murder. I trust him though, mostly.
How did you feel when Amber surprisingly returned home?
It was the first time in months we were all together and trusted each other. It made me feel more protective in fear of losing them again.
In the end, you ended up offering Ford's best friend Freddie a room in your house without even needing persuasion. Why were you so happy to take Freddie in?
I wasn't going to leave Freddie to his mom. I was a bad mom to Ford, and if I could prevent it, I didn't want to see another parenting issue happen again.
After you hear of the news that Yvonne wants Ford, Freddie and Johnny, you're extremely protective of Ford. You were adamant that Ford must stay in the house, and you saw he was upset. You knew you were just protecting him. How did you feel confining Ford and Freddie to the four walls of your house? Did you feel bad for Ford even though it was for his own safety?
Being kept inside, but trapped? Not really, especially after what happened to Johnny and Freddie. I felt and still feel like the second Ford steps outside, he's going to be kidnapped by some blonde psychopath.
Were you angry when Ford disobeyed you and kept sneaking out?
Yeah, but more worried and frustrated. I know Ford's only 12, but I couldn't believe he'd rather get ice cream than be alive.
How did you feel after hearing that Yvonne had both Johnny and Freddie? Were you worried the same would happen to Ford, which it did?
Yes, of course. Are we done yet?
How did you feel after you heard that your own son's best friend killed your horrible sister Yvonne and that Ford's life is no longer in danger because of it?
I'm very grateful she's dead, and this is weird, I know, but I feel like a part of my identity's gone.
At some points, when Callie wants Freddie dead, you try to tell Ford not to get involved with it and to stay out of the way, as well as telling Freddie you don't like his attitude. Why did you tell Ford not to get involved? Was it to protect him?
Yeah, how many times has he been in danger at this point? A lot. And I really, really don't want it to happen again.
How much did you adore your Aunt Yvonne? Why was she your idol?
Aunt Yvonne. I adored her more than I could say. She taught me how to be me. She didn't waste any time on Max or anyone else in the family. She knew that I was the only one who showed promise. And I did.
How angry were you upon hearing the fact that Freddie killed your beloved aunt, Yvonne?
Oh, I was so angry. It was molten hatred. Absolutely scalding, seething rage. I vowed that very day that I would not rest until Freddie got his just desserts. And that is what I am going to do.
How did it feel to approach Ford in the street and threaten him?
It was nice. It was powerful feeling, even. I knew that I had the situation under control. And I knew that he feared me.
Were you angry when Ford hit you with the baseball bat?
Oh, I was positively incandescent. Even now, the thought just makes me want to bludgeon him over the head with his same instrument. One day, I'll get him back for that.
How did it feel to set Rose's house alight with Freddie, Johnny and Rose inside?
Oh, it was amazing. Oh, simply the most wonderful feeling I've felt since I, met my Aunt Yvonne for the first time. It was like this whole ordeal was going to be over. At least most of it. I felt that the more that I did to end this charade here and now, the faster things would end, and that was my magnum opus. Too bad I had to go and ruin it.
How did it feel to see a pack of wolves attack Freddie?
Oh, Lord, it was so entertaining. Oh, I was hoping beyond hope that they'd rip him to shreds. It's so sad that they didn't, though. That's when I resolved to step up the pace of my planning.
How did it feel to place dynamite inside Freddie's car?
Well, it was a bit of a head rush, I guess you could say. The plan was all working out. Everything was falling into place. All I needed to do was detonate the stick, and everything would be taken care of.
When Freddie turned himself into you, how did that make you feel? Were you delighted about the prospect of inflicting more pain upon him?
Oh, my dear, I do not know if I could positively express the amount of joy that it gave me. No, not some pure good joy. No, this was the joy of someone who knew that they were going to extract every single tooth out of his mouth without anesthetic just to see him squirm and scream. The prospect of getting to inflict as much pain upon him as he has upon me, well, that's simply too great to bear.
How do you feel having a sister who all she wants to do is cause destruction?
Like I'm constantly trying to clean dirt.
How did you feel when you discovered what Callie was planning and that she wanted to kill Freddie?
Disgusted, but not surprised. After all, she set the house on fire.
How did you feel eavesdropping on Callie? Were you anxious that she'd find out? Were you scared of her?
It felt like I was in a horror movie, where the killer was always around the corner. Knowing her, she probably would kill me if she saw me. I was so anxious I thought she'd be able to hear my heart pounding. Honestly, I'm scared. I'm really scared. But I believe Freddie and his friends can stop her. I hope.
What encouraged you to help Freddie and his friends? Why do you hate Callie so much?
I guess it's just thinking that my parents would have wanted me to help right the wrongs that my monster of a sister caused. And maybe then, I can get some sort of closure. Either way you look at it, she's pure evil, and I know she played some part in my parents' death.
How did you feel after Lewis was in his bike accident? He didn't even remember you.
I felt pretty sad. Lewis and I were pretty close before his bike accident, and then afterwards, he did not even remember me. I was pretty stressed at the time with all the emotions whirling around inside me.
How did you feel after watching Callie die? Were you angry Cara never got imprisoned?
I felt like a part of me died after watching Kelly die. My best friend, my only confidant in this world was dead. Lewis not remembering me, and now this? Of course I was. Cara should have gone to jail for what she did to Kelly. She murdered a girl and did not go to jail.
After Kelly died, why did you snap her and get angry at everyone?
Again, I felt like a part of me had died after Kelly died, and I thought no one understood. Their comforting efforts just made me more mad. Nothing they could say could bring Kelly back.
What helped you to make the choice to go and pay Ford a visit to talk about your feelings?
I had to go visit Ford. I felt terrible for him after Amber ran away. I figured I understood his feelings more than most people did, even if it was in a different way. That is why I decided to go visit him and talk to him.
When you finally bonded with Ford and were both able to talk about your feelings, did you feel better? Like you'd finally managed to get everything out of your system with someone you can trust and who could empathize with you?
Surprisingly, I did. I went to help Ford, but he also helped me in return. Just knowing I was not alone in my feelings helped me cope with them better.
How did it feel to actually give Ford some encouragement? Did it make you feel encouraged too?
It felt great to give Ford some encouragement. I actually felt useful for the first time after Kelly's death, and that I was actually positively affecting people. Yes, it did make me feel encouraged, because I felt like I had some meaning again.
How did you feel when you discovered Lewis started to remember the past again, and that he remembered you?
Nothing can even come close to describing the joy I felt when Lewis remembered the past and me. It was a big moment for me, since I had my brother, one of my best friends, back. I cannot bring Kelly back, but at least I had Lewis.
After the fact that Cara had killed your best friend, how did you feel when you heard that Johnny had succeeded in killing Cara? Did it make you feel any better, or not?
Yes and no. I was glad Cara finally got what was coming for her, but I felt pretty terrible for her at the same time. Of course she was never going to change, but a part of me wishes she had the chance to.
How did you feel when you took Lewis to the tree where his and Amber's names were inscribed?
I wanted to make Lewis feel better. I knew he was upset about Amber, and he had the right to be. I was glad I made him feel better by helping him remember the better times.
After Amber's disappearance, you went to speak to Ford, and you comforted him, using your own experiences with Kelly to empathise with Ford. How did this make you feel?
I was happy I could help Ford again. It made me feel like I was useful for something once again.
What were you thinking the first time you met Ford, when you showed up unannounced on his doorstep?
Hoping he wouldn't hate me. I didn't have any backup plans at the time except for going with Rhea.
Were you expecting Ford to be so gullible?
I knew Ford was nice, but after what me and Cara did, his reaction was surprising. Of course I learned later why he was acting that way.
Did you actually break Amber's snow globe by accident, or was it on purpose?
No, I didn't want to break Ford's trust.
When Ford discovered your true plans, were you angry? Did you blame Amber?
1, kind of angry? I had to reveal it at some point. 2, Amber! Turning Ford against me and trapping me in an alley? Ugh.
How did it feel to make fun of Ford and share private information in front of the whole school?
First, why wasn't anyone doing anything? Like, hello, bully being mean? Other than that, it was an act of desperation. So, not my best choice, but everyone liked Ford, right?
How did you feel when Yvonne allowed you to spend time with and work with her in taking down Ford and his friends?
Not great. I felt like a useless sidekick and alone again. But I was glad I didn't have to live on the streets or something. Oh, and morally, I wanted a little revenge, but I didn't want to kill them, you know?
After you heard the news that Freddie killed your beloved mum, Yvonne, how did you feel?
She isn't beloved, please, but angry at Ford and the others. Sad because she was dead, and sort of relieved, but mostly confused. What could I do? Get revenge on Freddie, go to Dad, or move? No way I'm telling you what I'm doing. Except you already know, stupid writer.
When your sister was an arsonist and she dragged you along with her, how did that make you feel?
Gosh. Why would I want to get involved with committing, of all things, arson? Quite scary if you ask me, and definitely not lit, if you know what I mean. Ha.
How did you feel when you had to witness Louisiana bullying people?
Oh, Louie. Why would you bully someone? I am very much anti-bullying. Thank goodness I didn't start to copy her actions. Sheesh.
How did you feel about Raylyn's kindness towards your sister? Do you think Raylynn was the key for Louisiana changing her behaviour?
Look, Louisiana had some problems, I'll admit it. But rayalynn really worked some miracles on her. She's awesome.
When Louisiana was trying to find out the truth about Chloe, your other sister's death, were you scared for her? Did you know that her life could be in danger because she knew too much?
That's exactly how I felt. I didn't want to tell Louisiana anything. Out of fear that I could get tossed into the problem too.
And how much did the idea of her life being in danger freak you out?
Too much. Way too much. Look, I've lost one sis already. If I lose another, I'm going crazy!
You were very young when Chloe died back in 2015. You were only 4. Do you still remember her? Do you miss her?
I mean, I was only 4. But gosh. I wish I had more time I could have spent with her. Especially at an older age so I could remember it.
Why did you start drinking alcohol after your husband, Ted, died? Did you ever think about Freddie? Did you even care about Freddie?
Ted's death was very hard for me. I had occasionally been drinking alcohol to calm down, so I found myself drinking more and more until it was a habit. I regret to say I wasn't thinking a lot about Freddie. I was too busy grieving alone, but I did, and still do, care about him. I never meant to hurt him.
After Lilliana's accident, when Freddie was upset, why did you finally decide to show your face and be nice?
My daughter was pushed off of a bridge, and by Yvonne, no less. What kind of mother do you mistake me for? Well, moving on. Once I returned, I could see how much Lilliana and Freddie were hurting, so I was there more. But I was too late.
What did you think about Freddie finally having his first ever friend, Ford?
I thought it was nice. Ford seemed kind, for the most part. Freddie didn't have many friends at the time. He claimed friends were way past him, and from the way he talked about Ford, it sounded like he was happy.
Why did you decide you wanted to change?
One day, I took a closer look at my relationships around me, with Lilliana and Freddie. When Ted died, I had promised them that we'd get through this as a family. I had realized I had failed my own promise. My children didn't even want to speak to me. From then on, I tried to make things better.
How did you feel after Freddie got injured in the fire?
I was really scared, even though I didn't show it. It's what got me drinking more frequently again. I couldn't imagine losing Freddie, even if he hates me.
Why did you suddenly decide to turn on Ford and slip back into your old ways?
I was just scared for Freddie at the time. It felt like whenever Ford was around, something bad happened. I didn't know if Freddie was going to survive, and I wanted my children to be safe.
Why did you start drinking alcohol again?
It all started after Freddie's accident. I slipped back into an old habit. If you do it once, you do it frequently after that.
How did you feel when Rose got custody of Freddie because of your behaviour?
I was so angry at Freddie, and, well, myself, because I was worried for him, and this is what I got? I was bent on getting him back somehow, that I overlooked reason. I was also scared I was going to lose Lilliana as well.
Why did you throw vodka in Freddie's face?
Most of my actions that day were through a drunken haze, to be honest. He just made me fear that I was going to be alone. The vodka bottle was all I had, so in the heat of the moment, I threw it.
How did you feel when you were arrested and put in jail?
At first, I was really angry. But looking back now, Freddie didn't deserve to be treated like that. Jail has given me a lot of time to reflect on my actions.
Why did you suddenly decide to change and wanted to get in contact with Freddie again?
As I said, now that I have next to nothing to do all day, I've been thinking about the past. I hadn't exactly been the best mother, and I wanted to change that.
How do you feel now that you and Freddie are in contact and he visits you every week now?
I'm glad he's visiting. I wasn't even sure if he would do that at first. I really hope to repair things with him.
Explaining the scene if you don't understand what's happening. It makes me feel helpful and happy.
Do you feel like you have almost a special relationship with the lead characters Ford, Johnny, Freddie and Eve, even though you've never personally met them?
Sometimes I feel like I know the characters personally, when in reality, me and them don't talk with each other.
When you see one of the lead characters get seriously hurt and end up in hospital, how do you feel? If you feel close to them, it must be horrible to watch them get hurt.
Seeing one of the lead characters get hurt makes me feel sad because I sometimes feel close to them and they're good people. It's just horrible to see them get hurt.
Do you sometimes wish that you could actually communicate with the characters because you could empathise with them, understand them and know exactly everything that's going on because as the narrator you know everything?
Sometimes when the characters are sad and have no one to talk to, I want to go up to them and talk with them because I know what's going on and I can empathise with them.
What does it feel like to always be in the background?
Being in the background isn't the funnest because I'm unable to interact with the characters, but sometimes it's better because of all the craziness that's going on.
Do you feel scared spying on the villains like Yvonne and Kara? Do you get scared that you'll be found out and they'll come after you as well as Ford and Freddie?
Often when spying on villains, I get scared because they might find out I exist, and if they do, they might come after me or even worse, they'll go after Ford and Freddie.
Who do you think is your favourite character to report on and spy on? Who has the most interesting stories?
I like to spy on Ford because he's in every episode and has the most stories out of anyone in the Cyclist.